Chris, are you ready?
I am.
All right, I'm going to call us to order at 6:32. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Is there any public comment at this time? Want to raise your electronic hand? Yes, Brenda. Oh, you're muted.
I was wondering if in the groups tonight, will the school board member that's assigned to the group be able to answer questions besides technical questions? I mean, if somebody wanted to know, for example, what exactly the purpose of the merger committee was or something like that, would they be able to answer those sorts of questions?
So I know Krista's going to hit on this later. The board members are just listening and taking notes tonight. So we're not engaging in answering questions tonight. We're just gathering information. But Krista will go into that more when we get to that section.
You do realize that there's really only one meeting a year in which questions are generally answered, and that's the annual meeting, which has gone by. I think there'd be much better interaction between the community if at least simple questions were able to be answered.
Yeah,
That's my comment. Sorry.
All right, thank you.
would you like me to clarify now or get to it when we get to the meeting?
I think when we get to that portion of the meeting, that way if
Gotcha.
more people join us, then you can
Yeah.
clarify it then for everybody.
And if there's only me, well,
All right. So we have a consent agenda of 6 items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Yeah,
Sandy.
Sandy,
I'll
Okay.
second. Krista?
Krista. All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passed. Okay, next is board management and governance and action item to fill the vacancy on the merger study committee. My recommendation to the board is to appoint Liz Sayer to fill that position. She's been keeping up to date on the work of the committee. She originally, when we formed the committee, she was an original board member interested, but we didn't choose her. She was helping Bella gather student information. So, and she's willing to be a part of the continued work. So that's my recommendation to the board, is to appoint Liz. So,
I take it Liz is interested as well.
yes.
Okay. Just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
Well, she's not here, so we can quick.
yeah. I mean, I just spent an hour talking to her about it on the Mount Abe track. So, and she definitely has been keeping up with the study committee's deliberations.
Yes. And I think that's helpful at this stage in the game when the committee is so far along. It's helpful to have somebody who's been keeping up with it as it's going.
Mhm.
Okay, so is there willing to is someone willing to make a motion to appoint Liz to fill the vacancy on the merger study committee?
I'll make a motion to appoint Liz.
All right, thank
I
you.
would
Brenda.
second it.
And who is the second?
Sandy.
Sandy, all right. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor of appointing Liz Sayer to fill the vacancy on the merger study committee, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Steve, did you have a question? Okay. All right. Well, Krista, it's record breaking 6:36 and we're to the next part of it. We're going to have to wait till 7 though, till people join. I don't know if you want to take time to talk to the board members now about.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm glad we're able to use this meeting for this purpose. It is something we've talked about in the past, which, you know, the idea of having one business meeting and one community engagement meeting. So it's great that we were able to do that this time. And hopefully everyone had a chance to see the agenda with the more detailed instructions on it. On the public facing agenda, the community can see a version of what we're going to be doing without a lot of the added text. But I just wanted to take a few minutes to make sure everyone's comfortable with how this is going to work, answer any questions, and just briefly go over what we're going to be doing. And maybe we can try to make sure that we're wrapped up by 6:50 so that we can attend to anybody coming to join us. So hopefully there will be some folks here. It was a quick turnaround, and really the purpose for tonight is to re-engage the community in this conversation about the Levinson report. So the report went out, we talked about it a little bit as a board, and then we didn't really, we haven't really digested much of it yet. And similarly, I don't know that our community's had a chance to really digest it and ask questions about it yet. So the thought exchange was one avenue to starting that dialogue again, and this conversation is another avenue. As I was looking back at the work we did in the fall of 2019, I was thinking that, and saying to Don earlier, I really hope we can get back to doing more intensive engagement like that, ideally in person, but town by town, and focusing on students and staff, and just a more robust series of conversations where we can really just talk with people about all the things that are happening. So this is really just the first of what I hope will be a lot of conversations we can have. So really your job, Patrick is going to put every board member into a breakout room, and your job is really just to take notes and facilitate the conversation. And the agenda that you have gives you a time frame for that. And so we're going to ask that you stick to that time frame as much as you can. And Patrick's going to help me to broadcast little messages when it's 5 minutes out, so you know we're getting near to time to shift to the next part of the conversation. So, oh, Patrick, did you want to say something?
I just had a question, Krista, about some logistics around that. So
Yep.
there are currently 10 board members and 2 members of the public.
Mm-hmm.
In the event the numbers stay similar to that, how do you want to handle the groups and the breakouts?
I mean, I suppose we could start out with every board member in a room and hope that we have at least 3 community members in those rooms. But if we wanted double people up, then I don't know if it's easier if people are more familiar with breakout rooms than I am. Have any thoughts about that? I don't know if it's easier to create the rooms and then close it, or wait to, I mean, we could, the introduction into the meeting is going to take a few minutes, so we could wait and see how many people come. And
One way to do it, Krista, might be if what you're, and this was helpful to me to hear your thinking on this. If you're looking for, say, 3 community members per room, I can base the number of rooms by however many multiples of 3 we have, and go from there to assign board members. So I'll kind of play it off of that if that works for you.
that sounds great.
And if there's a total of 3, we'll just have one big room all together.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be flexible depending on how many people there are. And that means we might be more flexible about engaging in conversation. You know, I think the reason why the intent is for the board to really just listen and take notes is because, well, a couple of reasons. One, it's easy to, in responding to a question, get down into a really in-depth conversation about that one thing, and perhaps other people haven't had a chance to speak or to share their thoughts. And it changes the dynamic and the feedback we're able to get. But the hope is that we'll be generating a list of questions that are ones that we will then be able to share back out responses to with the community. and use your, judgment there. I think that we just want to make sure that whomever is here in your room with you has a chance to share their thoughts and questions. And that's the goal. And so the handout that is linked to, or the hyperlink that's at the top of the agenda that you got shows you where you can take those notes. So everyone has a different tab that you can use. And I suppose maybe we should figure out who's going to use which tab now. I thought it could correspond to the breakout room, but maybe that will take too long to do. So John, are you able to go in to the spreadsheet and put different board members' names on each sheet in the spreadsheet? Do you know how to do that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. That might be the easiest thing.
All right. Group 1, what do you want to name that one?
Well, just whichever board member is going to
Oh.
be in there. Yeah.
And Krista, are you participating or are you helping on the technical piece?
I think I'm going to just bounce around and make sure that things are going the way they should.
Okay.
So the first part is just introductions, giving everybody a chance to kind of get comfortable, get warmed up a little bit, just introduce themselves and share one way they hope to see our district grow. The second part is time for everybody to, 10 minutes for everybody to read the summary. So that's assuming folks might not have had that time yet. And it's 3 pages, so that should be enough time for folks to read through it and jot down any thoughts or questions they have. So that's kind of quiet time. And then the third section is breaking, or will already be in our breakout groups, but for all of this. But the third section is then you as the facilitator would ask each participant to share what they wrote down for their thoughts and questions. Sarah, did you have your hand up?
These are rather quick and it has a time, like an end time. Are we allowed to come back into the big group when we're all done?
Yes.
Okay.
You mean if you're just sitting, you've exhausted the topic? Is that what you're saying? Like, if, yeah. Yeah, I think you can get yourself out, right? On your own? Anybody for me?
Probably.
Okay.
And the other question or something that there was a sign up at school today that said, remember to listen, to understand, not always just to respond. And so what you were saying there was kind of in line with that. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. It's super hard not to respond. And Brenda was asking about that earlier, and it is a great opportunity to share information. But one thing I was envisioning is if we hear lots of folks asking this same question, what is the purpose of the merger or whatever it is, that's a really good indicator to us that we need to find a way to get that information out to everybody. And so answering in the moment doesn't really get that information out to everybody. And it's not that we don't want to give that information, but we really need to be able to hear all the things on people's minds and then share that back out with as many people as we can. So I think that's all I had. So yeah, once we go through the introduction and the review of the agenda, then Patrick will put everybody in their groups, and then intro, executive summary, and discussion is all in that breakout group. And then we'll come back and ask people to, it would be great if you could ask a community member to report back out on the discussion. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that depending on the turnout tonight, we might have to do this again because,
Yep.
Starksboro had a, informational meeting on the vote, which is happening tomorrow night, last week, which I attended. And what was striking is that how, sort of the issue of the merger study committee has sort of hijacked the Levinson report. People, sort of informally talking, they had no idea what the Levinson report was all about. They just knew that the Merger Study Committee was threatening to take their vote away. So it just suggests to me that this might not be just a one-off meeting tonight.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And if this format works well, you know, we can recreate it again in June or, you know, some other time before then. But I think that is the goal, to bring more awareness of that report that has a lot of good info in it.
All right, I guess we'll get going. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you could join us tonight for this quickly planned engagement piece. The school board has been working for several years to develop a plan for the future of our district so we can continue to offer students the education they deserve with excellent programs, supports, and activities, even as our student population continues to decline. The board hired a consultant, New Solutions K-12, to evaluate 6 community proposals and the proposal by Superintendent Reed that offers suggestions on ways we can address these challenges. This evaluation is based on core educational values that were identified by our community through a series of conversations way back in the fall of 2019. New Solutions K-12 presented a report to the board in February, and we'd like to know your thoughts and questions about this report. So thanks for joining us. Krista?
Yeah, so I'm Krista Siringo. I'm the vice chair of the board and chair of the Community Engagement Committee. And we're glad you're here and hope that this will be the first in a number of conversations we'll continue to have as we work through our plans for the future of MAUSD. Just a couple of quick things. I think folks know the drill with muting unless you're speaking on Zoom. It'd be great to have you turn your video on if you're able once you get into your breakout rooms. We'd really like to make sure everybody has a chance to have some airtime to share their thoughts and questions and concerns. We do ask that when you are speaking that you speak for yourself and not for a group that you may represent. So I just want to quickly go over our agenda. So board members are going to be in different breakout groups, and we have a smaller group tonight, so we might have several board members with several community members. That board member's role is really to take notes and move the conversation along. So we're encouraging them not to respond directly to questions if they can help it, although it's challenging. What we're going to do is gather all of those questions, and the thinking is that, you know, if you have a question, there might be others in the community that have that same question. So we'll be gathering those and sharing responses back out with the community. If there's the opportunity and the conversation is going well and the board member is able to address a question, that's fine. But we really want to make sure that we give this time to you. And our role is really just as a listener and a facilitator. When we come back to the larger group, we'll just ask that somebody nominate themselves to speak about your conversation, and board members will be taking notes all along. Those notes, along with the data that we collected when we did the thought exchange last week, that's all going to be shared back out with the community. And this is really just a chance for us to reinvigorate and re-energize the conversation about Nate Levinson's report, which came to the board in February. And we're just starting to look at again more as a board. So this is, again, the beginning of other conversations that we'll be having. So the agenda, once you get into your breakout room, there'll be an opportunity to introduce yourself to the other folks in the room and share a little bit about what your hopes and dreams are for MAUSD. Then we're going to make sure you have some time to read the executive summary of Nate's report. The report's quite long, and we encourage you to read it if you have the time. It's 60+ pages, but we did prepare a 3-page summary that we think hits the highlights. And as you're reading the summary, we invite you to jot down any thoughts or questions you have, and then you'll have the chance to talk about those with your group. And then we'll come back together. So I think those are all of the instructions we have. Before we go off into our groups, does anyone, either board members or community members, have any questions? You can raise your digital hand so I can see you if I can't see your face. Okay, it looks like everybody's set. Patrick, how are the groups looking? Do we have a pretty
Yeah,
good
so
mix?
I think we're going to have 4 groups,
Okay,
and there'll be 3 community members and 3 board members in each group, except one group will have 2 community members and 2 board members.
okay,
So what
Great.
I'll do, I'm going to create groups. They'll just be numbered 1 through 4, I think. But I'll ask folks to pick a particular room. So Don, Krista, Steve, if you can pick room 1.
Mhm.
And then for community members, Andrea, Caitlin, and Dan, if you can pick room 1 as well, that'll be 1 group. Room 2 would be Aaron, Sandra, and Brad on the board side. And then the 2 Callahans, 1 screen, but I'm counting you as 2 Callahans. And Margaret, if you can choose room 2. Room 3, Sarah, Bailey, and Rob from the board. And Mira, Marguerite, and Brenda from the community. And then the 4th room would be Kevin and Liz from the board, and Lynn and Daniel from the community. So I will create those 4 breakout rooms and let you choose those numbers.
and then if anyone is joining us who wasn't assigned, Patrick, should they just, will you just put them somewhere
Yes.
once
I
we all
will.
get into our rooms? Okay.
Yep.
So we should be able to go and pick one. Great.
I think you should be able to now.
Okay. Did everybody make it back, it looks like? Did the different groups get somebody to do the report out that was, so Sandy, in your group, is your spokesperson a board member or a community member who's going to report back?
Community member.
Community member, great. Okay, so our group, when it's our turn, maybe one of you good folks can do that. So it's good to see everybody back here, and hopefully you had a chance for some good conversation. And we have about 15 minutes to kind of share what some of the thoughts and questions and concerns were that came up. And as we said at the beginning, we're going to share that back out with people that didn't attend this meeting, so that those that weren't here get a chance to hear what's on everyone's minds. So I think we'll just go group by group, and actually, I think my group is group number 1. Is that right, Patrick? Are we breakout route 1? Okay. So,
I'm happy to report out for our group.
oh,
as
there
a
you are, Angie. I
member.
couldn't find you. Awesome. Thank you.
So I would say that the sentiment in our group was that everybody really valued the community as a whole, and everyone wants this experiment to be successful. There was a concern and a desire for stability in the district, for the sake of the district itself and for our children. There was conversation about some of the proposed recommendations in the executive summary. I don't know how specific we want to get here, but we had a good conversation. That's about it. I don't know if anyone else from group 1 wants to add to that.
Do you want to share some of the more specifics? I think we have time for that if you'd like to.
Okay, sure. I mean, I think that, there were some questions around, what additional savings could be incorporated into the community school budgets, because they already feel fairly lean. And there was just some questions about what some of those more major savings would be. One of my concerns was that, there was a description of the cost savings of closing schools. And I think that it's important to also consider the societal cost of closing these small community schools, knowing they would never reopen. And I think that's very significant. Dan, you had a great, when we were talking, you had a great, another question. I can't remember what it was.
It was just around potential changes in the state funding structure
Right,
for
right.
per pupil spending and what impact that might have on the financial outlook and or any of the options outlined in the report.
Right.
Great, thank you. Okay, who was in group 2?
It was Sandy and Brad and I and the Callahan group and Margaret.
You guys have a spokesperson?
Yes,
Yes.
I got nominated. And our internet just went unstable for a minute, so I missed that last part. So if we go into the twilight zone, our apologies here. But so we talked about sort of our long-term hopes and, you know, wishes for the district, and there was only 3 of us, but we're all from New Haven. So we talked about keeping community schools open, making sure that the process doesn't divide the community and the community as a whole. And then that when we look at opportunities, we look at more opportunities for our kids and not less. And then we talked about some of the specifics around the Levinson report, including the moving of 6th grade to the middle school, or other possibilities like a 6th grade separate from K through 5 and middle school. So there'd be just a 6th grade class of all the 6th graders in the district. The concept of extreme sister schools and the potential for maybe combining the 6th graders in those partnering schools. And then Margaret brought up a good point, but what do you do with 5th graders? Because a lot of the classrooms in the small schools are combined 5th, 6th grade, or in some cases 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And the 6th graders do bring a lot for those kids, but that's part of the problem with small schools. And what else did we talk about? We talked about the idea of childcare and how the Levinson report talked about that being something that we could easily do in our district to help address the lack of childcare as part of the reason why it's hard for young families to find a home here. Affordable housing is certainly another thing, but we've got to work with our town select boards and our community as a whole to try to address that specific issue. But the childcare issue with the additional space in our elementary schools could be a good option. And then I think that the other thing was that what does the withdrawal of Lincoln and possibly Starksboro now do to the remaining towns in the district? And how does this whole report affect the 3 towns remaining? And does it actually make a merger more likely because we can't sustain a SU on our own, or a district, or whatever we call it? So how do those withdrawals affect the Levinson report as it relates to the remaining 3 towns? And the financial impact, which is something that I think is a little bit mysterious for everybody, and it makes it hard for people to understand when they're voting about a town leaving, what it's going to do to, you know, our own taxes. If we, it's sort of like the future starts to look blank, because it's hard to know what that future will look like for the other 3 towns. Did I miss anything? Margaret, if you're there? Or Aaron or Sandy or Brad?
That was great. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kim.
that was good, Kim. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, group 3.
You not have a community person who's going to summarize. So I don't know if Bailey or Rob wants to. I took notes, so I have a few things down. If I can-
Sarah, do you want to start with that then? Is
I
that
guess
okay? Sorry to
so.
put you on the spot.
It was, I don't know that there was a lot of theme. I would say that we had 3 members from Bristol and Darksboro with Bailey, Rob, and I. And most people people definitely mentioned engagement outside of the academic part of school and extracurriculars, and whether that, whether something was based in your town or not, if that would affect that kind of involvement, either by the child or by the parents or by the community. There was, I would say, a good sense of needing, I guess, of let me think about, Mira's words about, there was a conversation a little bit about 6th grade and being a little bit concerned about that move, and wondering what would be the rationale behind that. And then making a couple comments about the report saying, well, it hit on some aspects, especially financial, and other aspects that it didn't necessarily really get at what was best for the students, and trying to make find a way to integrate that voice and that perspective about why any of these options would be best for kids in the future. And I don't know, there also the idea that school was more outside even academically, with all of the options for in the high school for vouchers and other ways to access and resources to access. I don't know if you all want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest takeaway, just listening to what other folks said, is the idea from the report of, what if it could spell out better why this is best for our students, not necessarily on the financial side of things.
I think the other question that came up was wondering how the report worked with or against the merger study and the work that the merger study committee is doing.
Okay, thank you. And Patrick, we only had 4 groups, is that right? So this would be our last one. Okay, so group 4.
So I was remiss on getting somebody to speak, but Daniel and Anna, you were here for the whole discussion. Would either one of you be willing to summarize? To put you on the spot, I guess. Thank you.
I thought, I'm sorry, that notes are being taken, that I didn't take any notes other than what I was just saying.
Yeah, I did take.
Was going to report out.
Yes, I did take good notes that were very thorough, right? And I got all that. But if you just it's loud here. So if you just want to summarize like what you took away from it, and maybe Anna could go to, maybe we could do it that way. But I do have it all written down, so it will be compiled into the questions and for sure.
Sure. My takeaway was that, people really value small schools, and, they're recognized as the center for our community to make connections and to bring people together and to really be the foundation and the bedrock for a healthy community. There's also understanding about, the situation that we're in and that we can't financially support the model as we are currently performing. So yeah, there were lots of good questions about several of the possible moves forward that were mentioned in that summary. There was talk of this, the sixth grade moving to the middle school, and some questions about what exactly does cost-effective mindset look like. What does that really boil down to? And, in, I think, number 2 of the possible solutions or possible moves forward, there is, the words other decisive measures could be used in the event of all 5 schools continuing to remain open. And I'm wondering, or there was a question around whether that was, similar to what the cost-effective mindset would look like if those decisive measures were to be taken. There was a lot of talk about Lincoln and Starksboro voting to withdraw from the district, and questions about where we're at with that, and if all parties involved there, including the board and those groups in Lincoln and Starksboro, if they're talking with one another about, some of the possibilities in the Levinson report, because, there seem to be some aligning factors there that could be, that could satisfy everybody's needs. Yeah, it was lovely having 2 administrators and 2 board members in our group.
Thank you for being put on the spot. And then Anna, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't. Well said, Daniel. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We are at 8:16 and we have 8:15 as our closing time. So I really want to be respectful of that. I want to also just say thanks to everyone for drawing yourself away from a lovely evening to be part of this conversation. So we will be sharing back out with folks the answers we might have to some of the questions that came up, but also just continuing to share information as we move forward in this process, and definitely will be reaching back out to our whole community to make sure people are as informed as they can be, but also have a chance to share their voice. So please continue to stay engaged, and just want to do one last check-in to see if there's anything else anybody really wants to say while we're all here.
This is Andrea. I just want to thank everyone that's involved with all of this, all of the boards and meetings, and I'm trying to participate as much as I can, but I really appreciate everyone's hard work in all directions on this.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody as well. So I know it's a lot of work in another meeting, especially for all the boards. So thanks for putting this together, and then hopefully we can get more participation, and next time plan it for a rainy evening.
And John, do we have anything else after this, or are we adjourning?
We could finish up with a final public comment. I don't think we need to take a meeting evaluation because we had very little of the business meeting tonight. So we can skip the meeting evaluation, but is there any public comment at this time? All right, I'm not seeing any. All right, then how about a motion to adjourn? Early, I might add.
I will make that motion and say thank you.
Same here, Steve.
All right, thank you, everyone. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you all. Good night.
Thanks. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.